Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Kathleen Walter. Joining us now from Washington is Representative Randy Hultgren, Republican from Illinois, and a member of the House Financial Services Committee. And Representative Hultgren, welcome to Newsmax TV.
Thanks, Kathleen. Good to be with you.
Well, I understand you've recently voiced concern about Common Core state standards, or a set of learning standards in English language arts and math that replaces previous K-12 standards. They've been adopted by 45 states. What do you see as the impact of these new national standards on states and also our students?
Well, quite honestly, that's my concern. We're not really sure what the impact is going to be. There's a lot of questions out there. Many people don't even know about Common Core. There was a poll not too long ago asking parents their view of Common Core, and about 2/3 weren't even familiar with Common Core, and yet it has a significant impact on education of our young people and testing of our young people. So for me, it really started out as a fact-finding mission to understand more, and from this, a lot of concerns have been raised, a lot of questions and uncertainty, and I also am just concerned when our kids are used as kind of experiments for some new ideas across the nation. So we wanted to get some questions answered, and many of those questions still have not been answered.
Should the federal government, though, even be driving standards for curriculum? And does Common Core amount basically to a federal takeover of education?
Well, that's my fear, and it absolutely should not. Federal government should not be controlling local education or driving curriculum or curriculum choices. I believe so strongly in local control and parental control, ultimately, of education. My fear is that this is being taken over. This started out as a state initiative, governors and state superintendents, but the federal Department of Education and the administration, I think, has seen this as an opportunity to come in and push some agenda items that they might have, and I am completely opposed to that and very concerned about that.
Yeah, since education is not specifically listed in the Constitution, the authority over education has in the past been left up to the states and to the people. So is Common Core even constitutional?
It's a good question, and that question may come up with the federal government getting more involved, and what we're seeing is tying dollars of Race to the Top dollars, also waivers from No Child Left Behind, the federal Department of Education using that as leverage or a hammer against local districts or states to have to comply with this, when this was brought out initially as just a voluntary option, and now we're seeing it shift potentially as being something that could be required.
So you're saying that the federal government is pressuring states to adopt these
Absolutely.
Standards by tying them to federal funding?
Right, that's what I've seen, and that's my concern. And that is just an ongoing concern as you see this pressure on local school districts. I see it just in Illinois. We're not sure exactly what the cost is going to be for Illinois school districts, but some estimates have been about $700 million over the next 7 years. Money we don't have to comply with some now federal requirements and federal push. And really, even if this is seen as a voluntary type of program, what isn't voluntary is a push to change testing. And a push to have all new tests, which would fit under the curriculum of Common Core. So if you want to do well on the test to be able to get into college, you really have to follow Common Core. So even if they might say, well, this is voluntary, in reality, there's incredible pressure on local school districts and states to comply with some of the federal push.
And you say that you're on a fact-finding mission about Common Core. Where does this fact-finding mission take you next?
Well, it's a good question. What we're pushing on is, my focus is on Illinois, the area that I represent, working with local legislators, with our leaders in Illinois, to encourage them to do what some other states have done. I met with Governor Pence from Indiana not long ago, and their legislature and the governor has decided to push the pause button on Common Core and say there's too many questions, there's too much unknown, and it's too risky to put their students out there as an experiment. I'm pushing Illinois to do some of the same things of saying, let's talk about whether this is good for our kids, whether it's good for our families, whether this is good for our local school districts. And from what I see so far, I've got more concerns about it than seeing positives that potentially could come from it.
And Representative, while we have you, I'd like to get your quick take on the big story in Washington today. The Obama administration and House Republicans are said to be negotiating today to reach a deal on extending the nation's borrowing authority for 6 weeks and reopening the federal government. What do you make of these negotiations?
Well, it's a good step at least to be talking. It's been so frustrating over the last couple of weeks where the President and the Senate have just said, we're not willing to negotiate, we're not willing to talk. I just think that's absolutely wrong. It's a frustrating time recognizing this is the Congress the American people have sent, where Republicans and conservatives only control 1/3 of government, but we can have an impact, and specifically in how we're spending money, we need to be strong and we need to step up and have our voice heard and the voice of our constituents heard. So we'll see. I think it's still a little bit too early to tell what's going to come of this, but at least it's a good step that there is talk, there is the start of negotiation here.
You voted against the last debt ceiling increase, I think. Could you vote for another increase?
It depends. I want to see what happens. What my commitment has been is I want to see what are we doing to change this trajectory of our nation of continuing to spend money we don't have, putting our kids and our grandkids further into debt. I want to see that we're changing that and shifting that. And one of the things that has happened with the cuts in spending through sequestration over the last months, we have seen for the first time now 2 years in a row where we actually have spent less than the year before. That's a little step in the right direction, but so much more has to happen. So I want to wait and see what the final vote looks like, what the product looks like, but I want to see that we're changing this trajectory of spending our future generations' resources because we're unwilling to make difficult decisions today to live within our means.
Last question for you, Representative. President Obama's press secretary, Jay Carney, yesterday launched into the Tea Party, accusing the Tea Party of being spiteful and deliberately harming Americans. He said the Tea Party wants Obama to resign to end the shutdown. Now, as someone who was elected with strong support of the Tea Party, how do you view the administration's attacks here?
Well, again, I think they're ridiculous. I know wonderful people in my area, some who have gotten involved in Tea Party work there. These are local groups, local people who are passionate about our country, passionate about our future, passionate about our Constitution and following the Constitution. I support them in that, and these are good people who want their voice to be heard, just like all of us should have that opportunity. So I think this is very detrimental when the White House is calling people names and using these extreme terms. It's very unfortunate and very unproductive, and I hope they stop and recognize that all of us ought to have an opportunity to have our thoughts and our voice heard in this government that we've got, and really with the push that we continue to have for a great future.
All right, Representative Randy Hultgren, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Great to be with you, Kathleen.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.